Hey, David Brewster here with a new episode of 3 for All. This is 3 Jay Graydon Licks from 1995, and we're going to be looking at the legendary Jay Graydon. And I recently did the guitarist of Steely Dan rant video and followed that with a Dean Parks 3 for All. And I had requests for Jay Graydon, definitely a legendary guitarist, and most people associate him and they kind of connect him with the song Peg from Steely Dan, which Jay definitely laid down that, classic guitar solo. But Jay did a lot more than just play the Peg guitar solo. It's kind of interesting that certain guitarists are kind of lumped with Steely Dan's legacy. Larry Carlton, another essential studio ace, but Larry's kind of connected with his solo from Kid Charlemagne. Jay's connected with his Peg solo. Elliot Randall's connected with Reelin' in the Gears. So it's kind of interesting to notice these 70s guitar legends, and then the solos they cut with Steely Dan kind of defined a little bit of who they are. It's really interesting. So Jay's career started somewhere around 1951, and he was 2 years old and appeared on his dad's television show, and he sang a song. That's really impressive. And then fast forward into the 60s, he's playing with bands, playing guitar, started doing some session and studio work around that time. And then, the sessions and studio work that he did in his career is very impressive. And if you combine his session work with people like Dean Parks and Larry Carlton, all Steely Dan alumni, that's a big bulk of those famous hits and famous songs from the 70s. But here's an image with some of the people that Jay's worked with in the studio in his career. So if there are any Doonesbury comic fans out there, Jay actually appeared in Doonesbury Comics, the comic strip, in 1977, and he appeared as Jay Wawa Graydon. I mean, I didn't know that until I started putting this episode together, and I thought, wait, Jay was in Doonesbury? And then I dug up some images kind of, capturing him in the comic strip. And I thought that was so cool, but here's a couple images featuring Jay Wawa Graydon. So the licks in this episode actually came from a Japanese instructional guitar video from 1995 called On Solos and Beyond, featuring Jay Graydon. And there's some really cool licks in this episode. And definitely Jay kind of rides somewhere between jazz and rock, obviously fusion. And with fusion music, sometimes it's heavier on jazz and just a little sprinkle of rock. And then sometimes fusion is heavy on rock with a little sprinkle of jazz. But there's a lot of, overdrive and distortion with some of these licks, a lot of aggression. So he's playing jazzy ideas, but he's doing it almost more like a rock guitarist, which is really cool. So buckle up if you want to, inject some jazzy rock ideas into your playing. This episode's for you. Here we go. The first lick's this hybrid picked pedal point idea, and it's really interesting, and he's hybrid picking, but it's like this, and we're in E minor, something like this. One more time. So it kind of reminds me of licks from Eric Johnson, also Steve Morse, with this kind of hybrid picked, approach, but it's in a minor key. I think Eric and Steve Morse have kind of done more major key ideas with this, and here Jay's basically doing this over E minor, or, E minor 7. So he's basically using this G note as the pedal point. He's also hybrid picking his way through it. So he's basically doing G to B, G to C sharp, G to D, G to E, G to F sharp. And then you're going to basically end grabbing this G and bend that up to A. So really slow, we're doing like that. And the hardest thing about this lick is keeping it clean, because you don't want the notes to bleed or ring into each other like this. Like, you don't want it to overlap, like that. You want it to be separate. And that's really hard to do, because you definitely want that separation between the notes where they don't bleed. Because you don't want that kind of sound. You want individual notes. And it's also very pronounced like that too when he's hybrid picking. Really cool lick, and it just jams over E or E minor, E minor 7, like that. Okay, next up we have a jazzy finger twisting lick, and this is a big challenge, but it's really cool. Something like this. One more time. So this is played over E minor 7 once again, but there's a change in the progression. So it's moving from E minor 7 to the flat 5 substitution, this B flat 7. So you've got this noticeable dark kind of shift in the chord progression behind this phrase, like that, right? So that, you know, B flat 7 is what the second half of this lick's played over. And we're starting right here. So already, like right off the bat, it's very interesting and kind of awkward. You know, it doesn't really flow like a typical kind of blues, you know, or rock lick. It's definitely more jazz and kind of, you know, twisting your fingers around. So we're doing, right? One more time right there. And right here. So that's over that B flat 7, and then by the end of the lick, it's going back into E minor again. So one more time, real slow. A little faster. Definitely a big handful, and the way the notes are kind of turning around and kind of mixing together and twisting your fingers is really interesting. Here's a jazzy legato phrase, and it's played over that same chord progression, that E minor 7 to B flat 7, the flat 5 sub, and it's something like this. One more time. It's got these quick, like little hammer-on pull-off flutters in there. So we're doing, basically starting right here on this A, coming down chromatically, in that A flat to G, then pick up this E note on the B string, and then walk up F sharp G to A on the high E, like that. And then when you get back up to that A note, right there you're going to do two, you know, pull-offs kind of quick, you know, to that G and that F sharp, and then grab this E note right there. So we're doing, and then right there, this D sharp, E, D sharp, and then end on that C right there. So it's pivoted off your third finger, which is kind of weird. And then right there, grab this B, C, B to A, and then end on that G note. So really slow, it's... a little faster. Cool lick. Last but not least, here's a bonus lick from this footage, and it's this advanced position shifting jazzy phrase. Really cool, like this. One more time. Definitely a big handful with this lick, and the chord progression that he's playing this over is really interesting. We're not going to really get into that, but the lick itself is like this. So he's starting like that, and then right there a quick shift to this C and E, and then right there shift all the way up and grab this E and that G sharp right there. So that's really weird, because it happens so fast right there. It's like as soon as you get back to that C note, you're already shifting to that E. And then right there, so that's really weird. Right there, so... once you get set up with that hammer-on pull-off like that from that G note, he starts walking down. Do it again on the B right there. And then on the G, you're going to end up on the 15th fret, like that. And then right there, so after that hammer-on pull-off on the G and you end on that 15th fret, you're going to come down this 18, 17, 16 right there, that B flat, or I'm sorry, that A flat, G to G flat, and then grab that F and then do a hammer-on pull-off with that G flat, Then you're going to come back here to this B flat, and then you're going to shift into this E flat right there. That's really weird. And that's all on the A string right there. I told you this was an advanced, workout. So really slow, it wasn't very slow. Something like that. It definitely has a flow to it. It's just really hard to kind of match it at first, but then once you kind of see where he's moving and slipping and shifting around, it falls into place and comes together. What a cool, super jazzy lick. That's going to wrap this episode of 3 for All with this look at 3 Jay Graydon licks from 1995. Definitely Jay's a great player. After watching this instructional video, which I hadn't seen that before until I put this episode together, I was really inspired. Like, wow, he was kind of talking about his gear and his tone and stuff. He was talking about sessions and breaking down solos from some songs. Al Jarreau, and he talked about the, Peg from Steely Dan and some stuff. But definitely a great guitarist, legendary. But a lot of people don't really know his name. They know the music and some of the songs and stuff that he did, session work on. They just don't really realize who it was that played those songs and those solos and licks and stuff. But Jay Graydon's definitely a dynamite player, and right along with other, studio legends. Like I mentioned, Larry Carlton and Dean Parks. You fast forward into people like Steve Lukather, of course, Dan Huff, and Michael Landau, and some of those players. And there's a legacy of those, just studio and session aces, just knocking great solos and licks and performances right out of the park. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.